Hey guys, and welcome back for another episode. Today we test our high-speed racing in an intergalactic racing competition known as F-Zero, an amazing and classic futuristic racer that was the perfect contrast and complement to Super Mario World at launch. Back in 1991, F-Zero was turning heads all over the place. Even news stations had to jump on the bandwagon to check out just how far at-home console gaming had come in only a mere 5 years after the NES's debut. After all of these years, this screen and theme have been burned into my memory for a very long time. Looking at and admiring your 4 different vehicles to choose from was so exciting. It's amazing to think that Captain Falcon's legacy all began right here. It's straight up so vintage and classic, the style really reminds me of a comic book cover, which honestly may have been what they were going for based on what you could see on the back of the box and in the manual. Their art style in the manual felt so special. They really banked on those 4 different characters, and the premise sounds like it should definitely be a movie. In the year 2560, the richest of rich from intergalactic trade wanted a new and elite form of entertainment for those that would dare to compete. And you know what that means? It puts us in the cockpit as we try to bring home the gold. At least they had the foresight and understood the 25th century was a realistic enough time period for this type of technology to exist, and a much better choice than something like Turtles in Time taking place in 2020 with Neon Knight Riders. At least the developers understood. The overall development of F-Zero is nothing short of fascinating too, giving us another amazing example of what concepts can be born only out of necessity when developers are faced with limitations. Something that surely goes over the heads of a lot of players is just how painstaking of a process it is to make something appear 3D when it's really not. Consider that every angle of a ship you see in this type of style isn't a polygon being viewed from a different angle, but a multitude of carefully drawn sprites created by an artist with outstanding prowess. Also, imagine how much of a staggering workload it would be if each of these vehicles had 4 wheels on them with rubber smoke animations too. The small development team considered that, and after looking at their Hot Wheels and Batmobile inspired designs, they lost the wheels, it made the project realistic to pull off, and looked even cooler than their original concept. Another thing to remember about the new technology of Mode 7 is that it allowed a gigantic sprite to be stretched and tilted at an angle, meaning there wouldn't be the possibility of any vertical objects such as trees or buildings, so the team placed the race setting high up into the clouds with futuristic cities in the distance. Years ago, I played through F-Zero X as only the second video on the channel, and now it's time to get back into this series' roots and see just how challenging it is to take home first place across its 15 tracks. Seatbelts are required for this type of action, so buckle up. I'm Jeff, and this is Marmax Gaming. F-Zero has 3 5-race leagues, the Knight, Queen, and King. You also have 3 difficulties available from the start, Beginner, Standard, and Expert. You might assume growing up with the same game I've managed to beat this before, but at such a young age, only my best efforts could get me so far, even on Beginner, or as the manual calls it, Beginner. I guess they thought it was safe to sound it out. It's pretty close. F-Zero has a few things about it that can honestly make it pretty darn tough to finish, and we'll go over that. Out of respect for Captain Falcon, we'll go ahead and choose him first. For those familiar with the series, you know that all of the tracks that started here continued later on in the other entries. Let's take a look at the first ever Mute City. Right away, there's a bunch of stuff I want to point out that the game does well. The sounds, the aesthetic, the speed, everything about it screams that you finally have the power of an arcade cabinet right in your own home. As far as what's displayed, you of course have your speed, the time, the map, your power/life bar, which cuts your top speed down when it falls below a certain level and can be regenerated by some giant ships when you drive over those designated regenerating areas. After each completed lap, you are rewarded with a super jet boost. Top left shows your rank, and the target position marker here basically means in order to be safe, you have to at least be in the position shown, which significantly shrinks each lap. You might think at first, how could you possibly fall below 4th place with only 3 other named opponents? Well, that's because F-Zero loves to ruin your day no matter where you are with these football helmet bumper car looking things. Whether you're in first or last, these guys will consistently get in your way, which can easily cause you to lose your top speed with a bump, swerve, or worst of all, multiple bumps smacking between the walls. Depending on how wide or painfully narrow the track is, these guys can be horrendous and downright race ruiners. Fortunately, Mute City isn't too bad at all, with its wide roads and only one turn that requires letting go of the gas to avoid the wall or slowing down too much. Second track, Big Blue, one of the most upbeat and exciting tracks out there. According to the manual, this takes place on a planet covered by 99% of water. It's really smart and fun how creative they got with their descriptions of the various courses, planets, vehicles, characters, and the world in general, making it very easy to understand why this racing game was so good at capturing imaginations by creating a truly unforgettable intergalactic circuit. As you continue to play, it becomes easier and easier to notice and take in all of the touches and polish that only comes with games as cutting edge as F-Zero back in 1990 and 91. The sense of speed was both audio and visual, with the side barriers becoming a mere blur as your speed increases, and as you approach or get passed by other vehicles, the unmistakable sounds of the Doppler effect are crucial to the experience. Plus, with the tiniest of details present with your driver and rotors as you steer left and right, you have to admit that for what it is, F-Zero still holds up beautifully. There are some stage hazards to look out for. Aside from the rough patches, you also have ice, or that's what I've been calling it for decades, but I should have known its real name, Magnetic Field Block Coat, which looks and handles just like ice, so your momentum with improper turns can get you into trouble. There are definitely some tighter turns and paths on Big Blue, but nothing insanely difficult to get down, and it definitely helps that the original F-Zero gives you 5 laps to get it just right. Third track, Sand Ocean, is a planet covered in dunes. It's said that in ancient times animals used to live here, but now only their fossilized bones remain. It doesn't take long to see that these roads have been made really quite narrow in comparison to the first 2 courses, and if you haven't figured out how to take a sharp turn, this course is definitely going to be your worst nightmare. Even letting go of your gas and holding a shoulder button down seemingly early enough can still not get the job done properly. It's courses like this that make you sink a bit deeper into your chair and really start to pay attention. Even the best of racing efforts can quickly be set back by just a slight miscue or bump from an opponent. And once you lose that momentum, you can often be put right into harm's way, making it very difficult to recover. Earlier, I started to touch on a few things that make F-Zero difficult to finish, and now seems like a better time to go over those things. You only start a Grand Prix with 2 additional tries. You can lose your life by not ranking high enough on any given lap, or of course losing all of your power, resulting in a crash out. There are no continues from game over here, so the only way to get through the Grand Prix are to actually know what you're doing. Something that makes F-Zero uniquely difficult is what they do with your opponents. Who's ever in second place or right behind you is constantly refreshed and flagged right behind your vehicle. In other words, there's no way to leave your opponents in the dust. You could be driving faster than world record pace, all it takes is a slight bump and you have second place already right on your ass. So the rubber banding AI is very extreme, but the biggest takeaway here, one little mistake means second place is right on you, and if they bump you, then again you're losing more speed. Every extra attempt can end up deciding a whole lot between you taking another first or being back on the start screen. Fourth track, Death Wind. Apparently this place with gigantic skeletons on the horizon is the most peaceful planet in the galaxy. The shape of the course may be incredibly simple, but keep in mind the name of this place is Death Wind, so that means you have to battle and adjust to not only avoid being pushed into the wall, but most importantly, managing to align with those speed arrows, because those are the single most important thing to winning on this course. And also, being able to get through those skinny turns with other vehicles taking up nearly half of the road can lead to some serious issues as well. If you do miss one of those arrows, hopefully you're able to make good use of one of your jet reserve boosts. Otherwise, you'll be getting slammed from behind both literally and metaphorically, as the game can definitely leave you feeling ravaged and helpless, bumping from vehicles to walls over and over again, losing all of your built-up momentum. fifth and final track of the Night League. Silence. As the map in the corner indicates, this course is all about properly sliding through right-angle turns without losing too much speed. There's also a couple other interesting things going on with it, such as the landmines on a slightly shorter path, along with the ramp to get you over a huge and punishing rough patch. Unless you have a jet boost for this part, running through this only a time or two pretty much puts the nail in the coffin. The game has definitely shown its vibrant and bold colors thus far, but the ones used on this course have always stood out to me. Like I always wanted shoes or a shirt with this exact spectrum on it. Overall, you need to be smart with your boosts while being careful and accurate without losing too much speed around all of those sharp turns. Don't miss that jump. Try to avoid the mines and your enemies in order to get yourself to the finish line and be dubbed worthy of Sir Knight, champion of the Knights League. Let's try out Dr. Stewart, our 31-year-old son of a deceased scientist who built the Golden Fox. This machine is much less balanced, with all emphasis on acceleration and light weight, which would explain why you always notice it's hot off the line in every race. Apparently, it requires a high level of skill to properly navigate turns with this vehicle, which probably means I'll be doing quite a bit of sliding. Now it's time to check out the Queen League, starting out with Mute City 2. It's pretty neat that it looks as if the race is taking place in the evening time, and overall the course is pretty much the same aside from this round road splitting moment here. It's really not that much tougher than the first Mute City. I hadn't really used this character much before, and I have to say I love how it gets you out in front immediately because sometimes passing through your opponents can be the worst part. I was assuming early that I might have issues getting past due to the lower top speed, but it honestly wasn't an issue. It was so convenient how often and quickly your vehicle could get above and stay over 400 kilometers per hour. This means any mistakes that happened were minor since recovery was almost immediate, plus those boosts to make anything up to reclaim the lead right away made it pretty easy. Track 7, Port Town 1. So this is a cool little course with jumps, tight turns, and magnetic strips that pull you toward harm's way. It's described as a harbor town as a point for intergalactic trade. For my entire life until looking more into strategy, I had always heard the crack of my ship hitting the ground after a jump, with some speed loss, until just recently reading and learning that holding down in the air points your vehicle's nose upward, giving you more airtime and resulting in a smoother landing. Using the same sound effect as if you're healing, so bizarre. Doesn't even tell you this in the manual either. Definitely have to be aware that sometimes accidentally rocking as you push down can lead to loss of control though. I have to say, learning how to handle a new ship and admiring its animations I haven't really seen before is pretty awesome and a bit surreal. They do it so well and smoothly too. In general, you have to watch out when coming up and down from jumps because it really doesn't take that much to get bumped off track. Although it's on a flat sprite and a bit dated, you have to admit it's pretty neat that they tried their best to make it appear as if cities were far below you with their tiny streets, buildings, and lights. Although growing up, I thought it looked like a big computer circuit board of some kind. Track 8, officially getting over halfway through the courses with Red Canyon 1. Apparently, it's a common meeting ground for space pirates. It's got 135-degree turns, jumps, and it's overall pretty demanding of your ability to handle your vehicle with as little of mistakes as possible. Once again, I definitely appreciate Dr. Stewart's high acceleration because I hardly felt like I was losing much speed when briefly letting go of the gas. I could imagine this would be a lot more annoying of a course if we didn't jump right out into first and had to race from behind, although it's something we'll have to do later once we tackle expert mode. Better go ahead and mention the song always gets me pumped and reminds me of how cool it was when games were really starting to sound more and more like recognizable instruments. Next course is another new environment with Whiteland 1, described as a very cold planet under constant snowfall, yet still a very popular place for tourists. We can see that the roads aren't super wide, there are tight turns, and letting go of the gas can immediately allow the others back into the race. And since there are so many jumps, this can come with some harsh consequences. Aside from the jump sections, we have to look out for the slippery turns that can really hurt your pace or rack up damage quickly, if not handled properly. A pretty tough aspect about F-Zero is that, although you can regenerate some health each lap, it's usually not very much at all, and one of the drawbacks of this lighter ship is that it doesn't take contact very well, which means all it takes is some bouncing around and a handful of times for you to be in a whole lot of trouble. We've come so far though, and with just a life to spare, it's time to get serious if we want to make it through this cup, and hearing a 1-up as our points are totaled is a nice boost of confidence going into the final race. Which takes place in the same planet with Whiteland 2. Now here's a track that I guarantee some of you never made it through. Sure, there are some tough turns, slippery patches, and narrow roads, but nothing serves as a roadblock quite like this gap right here. You can't even blame players that never made it through this. In fact, I was the first player to ever do it on this cartridge, and I picked it up just a few years ago since it came with the box. Who knows how many people played this or how much rage it caused its initial owners, but this gave me flashbacks immediately. Of course, learning about holding down changes everything and turns this from a 10 out of 10 frustrating to something a lot more manageable. What's funny is I definitely had the course buried deep in my subconscious, and just hearing its wicked intro, glancing at that big ass gap in the corner, brought it all back to me. Feeling great to finally, after so many years, put this one behind me and get a time on that leaderboard. Now that we've captured the queen, the last to worry about is the vengeance of the king. This time we're going with Pico and his Wild Goose, a vehicle that's made to withstand damage well and kind of has the acceleration and top end speed balance between Captain Falcon and Samurai Goro, which, by the way, you might wonder when we're racing with our 4th racer on only 3 circuits, but we will because we're saving the best for last. Time to revisit Mute City once more, and this time it's at night. The course is the same as the first, except for this stretch is heavily punishing for those that do anything but keep it down the middle, and also loaded with a minefield too. Biggest takeaway here is how to safely get through those mines without losing much time, and thankfully our boost allows us to take a nice straight line to quickly get through it and blast right through the rough patches. As long as you can avoid getting knocked all around once you get in the lead, first place will be yours. Track number 12, coming back to Death Wind for a second time. As opposed to the old simple track shape, there's a lot more going on here that makes this course very dangerous. After a stretch of getting blown by the wind, we get to deal with some pretty severe and tight turns with those speed arrows that we do kind of want to use, but it's very challenging to use them properly, and can often find yourself at the mercy of the course's walls and oncoming traffic. The stretch to heal on is pretty dang short too, so on this course and some others I'd even let go of the gas on earlier laps just to give myself a realistic chance of actually surviving to see a 5th lap. On some of the most challenging courses, I'd say it's pretty advisable to stack 2 or 3 jet boosts to either quickly recover from the mistake or lay down a couple of blistering final 2 laps in order to reclaim the lead right before the race ends. Only a few courses left, and it's time to revisit Port Town. I guess I haven't really thought about it like this before, but I think the 2 Port Towns are some of my favorite tracks in the game. Not only do I like the color, but the music is straight up outstanding too. I find myself enjoying its jumps before the course tests your skill as you weave back and forth to stay safe between the magnets, its numerous turns, but by this point, hopefully you have a good feel for when to let go of the gas, your shoulder buttons, and can fire back up to speed as quickly as possible. I could have brought this up earlier, but it's pretty darn interesting in some of these courses that you can see the old roads of the other course, which makes it all feel that much more real, as if the team running the Grand Prix actually had a land crew setting up these alterations. Even more interesting, if you were to hit ramps a certain way, you can actually land on these old courses, which the game doesn't respond to very kindly, and surprisingly enough, even though it's such an old racing game, it won't even allow you to take big shortcuts in this way. It's kind of funny to see and hear about newer racing games getting broken down to ridiculously short laps, but back in 90 and 91, F-Zero just wasn't having any of that. Red Canyon 2 is the last repeat of a theme we will see, as the final course is completely unique. Our second time in the Sandy Dunes is a fun one that honestly isn't that frustrating once you're comfortable with the few turns, and there's lots of fun to be had along with time to save if you properly hit these ramps in succession, along with the huge double jump that plays unlike anything we've seen up until this point. Better make sure to hold down though, because even hitting this first ramp at full speed without holding down won't be good enough. It's not the toughest course we've seen up until this point, and as long as your nerves aren't completely out of whack, there shouldn't be any issues as you confidently drive your way to another first place. The final and most dangerous course of all, here we have Firefield. So this place definitely plays and sounds like a final boss of a track. The backstory is pretty awesome too, apparently once being one of the greatest places to harvest minerals, but the leading resources company was too greedy and reckless, which led to digging too deep and hitting a gigantic volcano, causing a massive explosion as lava poured out over everything, turning it into a field of extremely hot magma. The accident was so awful and catastrophic that it caused the resources company to go bankrupt, but even still they agreed to help construct and be part of the F-Zero circuit amongst all the flames. Only a peek into your left corner really gives you an idea that this won't be any walk in the park. The roads are narrow, windy, full of rough patches, making all the vehicles really tough to avoid. Plus there are mines and magnetic fields. No ramps or anything. Just a ton of precise driving around tight turns and hazards on the tight roads gives you plenty to wear down your health, and also plenty to worry about as you do everything you can to reach first place. The healing portion of the track is even out of the way, so you definitely won't want to stop through if you're too far behind, or especially on the last lap. Now that we've managed to get through all of the courses, it's time to bump up the difficulty, and why bother with standard when we can just go right up and throw everything into expert. Now it's time for Samurai Goro and his Fire Stingray to shine. With the highest top speed and slowest acceleration, this means we have to race our best to be the best. Any bump into vehicles or walls will slow us down too often. Plus we will always be the slowest off the line, which means we will have the most things to look out for, and there's no sense in holding back at this point. F-Zero on Expert and beyond is downright infuriating. You would be shocked at how quickly the ships pull away from you, especially with Goro, as you'd expect, and it's often not until a lap or two in that you can realistically get yourself in first, and even still, those damn errant football helmets are so freaking annoying. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, it's like the vehicles go from straight lines and tight turns to sometimes immediately drunk behind the wheel as soon as you're close to passing them. In fact, it was so frustrating that by the Queen's League, I was trying out Dr. Stewart again, just because your opponents are so obnoxious to get past. Figured might as well get ahead and stay ahead, but the weakness of his ship didn't really lend itself as a favor either, and I quickly found myself getting bumped from behind and my health bar being ravaged. There's nothing easy at all about this, and you might even find yourself having to learn from the best players out there using advanced metagame techniques, like getting a good jump off the line and knowing how to put your heavy, slow acceleration vehicle in front of the others for a consistent bump or double bump toward top speed. Honestly, that changed things in an immense way, because it's either starting off in second near top speed or quickly being harassed and ruined by trailing bumper cars. On these higher difficulty settings, you're always going to have memorable moments, and with everything in mind that we talked about, as in second place being right behind you, it's crazy how quickly first place can fall right through your fingers. Trying to overtake every single racer along the way is very tough. You'll find yourself saying, "Get out of the way! Get 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 the f out of the way! Stop. Stop. It wasn't until expert mode when I remembered how important it is to quickly tap the gas through turns as opposed to letting go completely, because every bit of momentum you can keep on every turn has massive consequence. Your recovery has to be crisp because you'll find yourself in so many terrible situations as your speed continues to dip from each collision, and it can result in the worst domino effect imaginable. There's no way around it. You really have to be on your A game and avoid enough bad luck to get through the higher difficulties. I certainly don't mean to skimp over just how atrociously brutal, punishing, and harshly difficult F-Zero is on expert, especially in the King's Lead. Death Wind 2 is a nightmare. That took me a lot of practice and a lot of deaths. The damn bumper cars, you really don't know how awful they are until you've played, not to mention your 3 named opponents. It's immensely frustrating, and you'll be begging for mercy even if you're just aiming for third trying to advance. You could argue that these randomized bumper cars add to the replay value, and they certainly do as far as always providing a monumental challenge, but with those limited tries as you do your absolute best, F-Zero will put you through hell over and over. Firefield, honestly, has become nearly unspeakably evil as far as I'm concerned. The amount of races that slipped right through my fingers due to damage racking up with crap moment after crap moment, ultimately leaving you at another game over screen, was just too much, completely brokenhearted, and you have to make it through the other 4 races for another try. Eventually, after multiple game overs and racing my way back to Firefield several times, I finally did well enough to get through the circuit and beat expert mode, despite having first place of this race stolen at the finish line. Man, that was intense, and honestly, pretty awful. But expert mode, it's done. Overall, in conclusion, I'd say F-Zero on the Super Nintendo is... Whoa, just what the heck do you think you're doing? Oh, hey man, I just beat F-Zero on the Super Nintendo on the highest difficulty, and I'm just starting to wrap things up. Just hold on to your jet reserves, pal. It's not the highest difficulty. It might be the highest one that you've unlocked, but if you care to keep reading the credits, you've actually unlocked Master Mode. Master Mode? What? If you want to be taking it seriously, you definitely have to take care of that. Ah! You know what they say, F-Zero. Payback's a real bitch. I hope you've got your box protector on.
Show me your moves.
Falcon Punch!